English translation. 359th contact. Thursday, 13th May 2004. 23:51 hours.
Good of you to come, my friend. We already greeted each other telepathically when you flew over our center with Florina at 23:05 hours to the northeast. Michael Uiterbroek saw your ship when he was outdoors, and of course he called me and Hans-Georg out, who had a conversation with me in the kitchen. At first I thought it was Florina who flew over us so deeply and in such a radiant light after our joint correction work with Bernadette, which is why I called out for her, but then you answered. For my part, however, I did not know that you were together with Florina.
Florina did not tell you about that either, as she explained to me. And as I already told you at 23:05 HRs, I stayed in my forest arbor during the time of your correction work and thus for 2 hours, which I use more often to devote myself to leisure and to ponder. And before I came here, I was in my forest arbor again, because I had left something there which I had to get, of course. Then I walked a few more steps to the boiler and then came here to your workroom.
Aha, my forest arbor. Nice, my son, that you like it there. By the way, Michael and Hans-Georg will each write a sighting report about the observation of your ship. I will then include these reports in this conversation report. But tell me, that Eva is sleeping so deep in there is probably because you helped her a little, no?
Sighting report from the 13th of May, 2004 or 2 nocturnal encounters with the ship of Tar and Florina above the SSS Center in Hinterschmidruti, Switzerland.
On Thursday, the 13th of May 2004, I had a job to do at night in the SSS Center in Hinterschmidruti, Switzerland. On my arrival, Bernadette Brand and Billy Edward Albert Meyer were busy in the living room with correction work on a new contact report volume. Usually either the extraterrestrial contact persons Florina, Njana, or Ptah are present at this work. They park their ship hovering over the center, shielding it from any visual or radar detection, and participate in the correction work by communicating telepathically with Billy. After I had briefly checked into the living room, I got down to work. After I had done this some time later, I went back to the kitchen of the Sim Yase Silver Star Center. There were several people present, but all of them, except passive member Michael Uiterbroek, left the room bit by bit. Billy and Bernadette had finished their corrections in the meantime, and had also appeared in the kitchen. After a long discussion with passive member Michael Uiterbroek, he left the room at about 23 hours, and I went on with Billy alone to discuss any issues that arose. No sooner had Michael Uiterbroek disappeared than he suddenly stood under the back kitchen door, leading to the backyard again, and drew our attention to the fact that a ship was hovering over the SSS Center. Immediately, Billy Edward Albert Meyer and I, Hans-Georg Lansendorfer, followed Michael to the backyard to look up into the night sky. Clearly, a strong yellow, big, bright, and shining light was visible, flying with considerable speed and at low altitude from southwest direction towards northeast over the roof of the SSS Center. The clock just showed 23:05 HRs. While the three of us followed the bright light, Billy suddenly mentioned that according to a telepathic call, it was the ship of Ptah, which was on its way home with Florina. In the same breath, he also explained that Ptah would disappear from our sight at any moment, as he had told him. Immediately, the luminous object gave the impression that its flying angle was changing slightly, whereupon the bright light actually went out slowly, and the object disappeared. As Billy explained to us, just during our sighting, Ptah explained to him in telepathic form that he and Florina were still on the center grounds. Meanwhile, while Florina participated in the correction work, Ptah enjoyed 2 hours of peace and quiet in one of our forest arbors at the resting place for hikers. After the correction work was finished at about 22:05 HRs, Florina joined him, after which they spent another hour together in Ta's favorite summer house. The flight, we observed, served to bring Florina home, but Ptah, as he telepathically told Billy, wanted to return that same night for a talk, which Billy Edward Albert Meyer, of course, told us. At about 23:40 hours, I walked towards my car, which I had parked as usual in the upper parking lot near the garage. While I walked the short and ascending part on the gravel road to my car, I looked into the night darkness towards the eastern hill, where the old directional radio tower of the disused military installation is located. At that very moment, over the hill, to the right of the tower and coming from the east, a yellowish-white and brightly shining, radiant object appeared in the sky, slowly approaching and, somewhat obscured by the branches of the surrounding trees, actually coming closer. To get a better view of the object, I took a few steps to the left while walking, and as I approached my vehicle and looked towards the object, the bright light quickly faded until it was completely extinguished a few seconds later. So I did not pay any further attention to it. After I had finished my vigil about 2 hours later, I met Billy in the kitchen and inquired whether Ptah might have reappeared in the center at the time of my sighting of the glowing object. He said he had not looked at the exact time when Ptah contacted him again, but it must have been half an hour or more after our joint sighting of the ship, which could be the same time as my sighting. As soon as he receives the contact report for the transcript, he will tell me the exact time. To be honest, I am already curious how well the times match and whether it was really the ship from Ptah. Otherwise, a light mystery remains open about an extraordinary nightly observation in the Simya-Se Silver Star Center in Hinterschmidruti. It was Ptah who contacted Billy again at 23:51 HRs. Hans-Georg Lanzendorfer, Switzerland.
Yes, I helped. She is righteously tired and needs sleep. She always has very rigorous days because the care and all the activities concerning your daughter Selena Mercedes are very hard work. Eva's efforts and all her hard work are very admirable, also in terms of the work she does for the mission. Equally remarkable are the efforts of various core group members to help Selena and cannot be taken for granted among Earth humans. In the wise in which everything is handled in your circle in this regard, including the living together and the interpersonal relationships among all group members, I must describe as a great exception, for our knowledge and understanding of these relationships with regard to the Earth humans is unfortunately very negative. So it is all the more important that with you it is different and therefore the opposite is very pleasant. Also, the work concerning the mission, which is done by all group members, needs admiration.
Sighting report by Michael Utterbrook, Canada, Thursday, the 13th of May, 2004, 23:05 hours.
I, Michael Utterbrook, have been standing outside in the parking lot east of the house for some time and have seen satellites or airplanes flying by on various occasions. After about half an hour, I went back into the house to put on my shoes, which I kept by my closet, and to get ready for the night's rest. As I walked along the poultry pen, I looked up and was amazed at the unusually wide view and the increasing number of stars as night fell. Suddenly a great bright light approached from the southwestern sky, shining in a yellowish hue. It was noticeably larger and deeper in height than the satellites observed before. It was about the size of Venus and flew faster than the high-flying planes. Its flight was silent. It was unmistakably a ship. I watched it approach for a few seconds and thought Billy would be interested to see it. I knew he was in the kitchen with Hans-Georg Lanzendorfer. Since I was only a few meters away from the kitchen door, I briefly let the thought go to the ship that I would orientate Billy about the ship. And then, without losing a second, I opened the back door and said, "There is a ship outside." Both Billy and Hans-Georg came out quickly. Billy confirmed that it was a ship. It was moving at a steady speed, approaching from the southwest to the northeast. We looked up over the roof of the house. Billy told us that he had just received the news that it was Ptah, and that he was with Florina and they would soon be gone. I sent a Salome greeting. We watched as the ship went out of sight behind the trees. Billy told me that Ptah said he could come back later. Billy was obviously happy, as were we all. It was 23:05 Gerars. The sighting lasted about a minute and a half.
Your words are kind and grateful, and all the group members really deserve it. But what I want to say is that you and Quetzal, and all of you have been making a speech mistake since we started our contacts, and it is related to the core group. You always say core group members or core groups members, which is wrong, because it is not called core groups, but core group.
You know that we mean all groups.
That is quite correct, dear friend, but we are only one core group and not several of them. And even if there are several of them, a single core group is called a core group, just as the members are core group members. Only if there are several of them, of whom we are talking about, then it is called a core group, or core group members.
Thank you for the instruction, which we are all happy to take note of, and according to which we will orient our language, because that is what I will try to do. I wonder why you did not explain this to us earlier.
For my part, I did not mind, but recently Andreas asked why you talk about core groups members and not core group members, because core groups members are not correct in individual cases of a core group. So for my part, I had no reason to say anything, but now that Andreas asked...
But this means that we have been mispronouncing it for nearly 30 years. It would have been good if you had brought it to our attention.
Maybe I really should have. But now I have said it. But tell me, do you know anything about UFOs flying over Mexico on 5th of March 2004? Please read this little newspaper article that appeared in the Tages Anzeiger today, 13th May.
We are aware of the matter through earthly news broadcasts and TV pictures, but we have no further knowledge of the incident, if it is indeed a fake and not a forgery. The moving pictures we know from TV broadcasts seem to me to be just as extremely peculiar as the strange formation of the round light objects, which simply appear flat and therefore cannot be spherical either. There are also no contours to be seen, as well as no other things that indicate that they could really have been materially solid objects. Nevertheless, I cannot exclude the possibility that they could have been bioorganic flying objects of different dimensions, which, as you know, are harmless life forms from a neighboring dimension and which can usually only be photographed by infrared cameras or recorded on infrared film. By this I mean those bioorganic flying objects that you could observe at different places in the world and that my father Svath has already pointed out to you. One last possibility could be considered. However, if you take into account the secret technical aircraft of the USA, which shield themselves from view and can therefore only be filmed with infrared cameras or seen with infrared vision devices. I very much doubt that the unknown aircraft in Mexico were of extraterrestrial intelligence.
Well, that settles that too. And here, my friend, I have the desired postcards and also the peace brochure.
Thank you. The cards and the brochure have turned out pleasingly well.
All the computer work on the peace symbol and the brochure was done by Bernadette. The profit and loss account for the postcards belongs to Piero.
I thank them for this as well as you, who also contributed with the important preparatory work without which no symbols would have been possible.
It is okay, we do not have to talk about it. Do you know anything about the Fa'afafine, because I had a phone call about it recently? I was asked what Fa'afafines were. As far as I know, they are boys who are brought up as girls from a baby age, or at least are re-educated at a young age to be girls who actually perform girl roles. If I remember correctly, that is how it is practiced in the South Seas, in a place or on an island called Upolu or something. I explained that to the woman, because somehow I remember Svath explaining it to me. Was that right, or did I say something wrong?
Your memory is still good. What you explained is correct. But now, dear friend Edward, I want to talk to you about something very personal, if you have nothing more to talk about officially.
I do not at the moment.
Then I have the following request.